nobody was talking about long COVID yet, but I was finding it online. So I was like, okay, persistent symptoms after COVID, what's going on? And then more and more and more, and like doctors were saying, no, we don't know. So like I was just like, okay, I'm gonna figure this whole thing out myself, like I think many people do, and you just start
Right.
researching, and this again is adding to all of this fear and stress around the health, where I would, ended up on Reddit, long COVID forum, and that is just like from that moment on, you start to get more and more symptoms because you're reading
Yeah.
everybody like, I had COVID and I had this and this and this and this and this, and I was like, oh yeah, I had those. I didn't even notice these, but now I'm gonna look out for them, because
Yeah.
maybe, and they're like, just keep track of your symptoms. Like the more symptoms you notice, just keep track, like be hyper vigilant, and it's like,
Oh fuck. That's like the
and now
opposite.
yeah, and now it's like, oh
Put
shit,
more
I'm not.
fire into it. No, you put more gasoline on the fire, pour more.
You wonder like, why am I noticing more and more symptoms? And it's just like that cycle of,
Yeah.
and then I ended up on the CFS kind of subreddit, and that is honestly one of the like, I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's like such a, specifically the one on Reddit is so toxic. Like it's just
Hmm.
insanely like demoralizing. Like you just go on there, and anybody that posts a recovery story gets removed, and it just like,
Right.
you're gonna be stuck with this for like 10, 20 years unless you really don't do anything that gives you symptoms. Basically what I got from the CFS forums was like so much information that anything that, and there's some truth in it, but the approach
Yeah,
to it
yeah.
is just way wrong. Whereas like anything that's gonna increase your stress bucket is gonna lead you to a severe state. And I was like, I'm in a mild state currently, but these people like on the forums, they've been here for 30 years, and they're like, the only
Oh
way that I
man.
got here is from getting into the severe state. So like, do whatever you can to not have any emotional stress, not have any cognitive stress,
So
and
we
not have
assume
any.
that they're the experts because they've dealt
Yeah,
with this for 30 fucking years. But
exactly.
reality is they've been doing it fucking wrong for 30 fucking
Yeah.
years. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to invite Kyle to the show. Kyle, tell us about your perfect shit show storm. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Helmut. Yeah, let's jump right in. Yeah, I guess for me, it started, like you said, the what's the perfect storm? And it was stress, like it is for everybody, just like
Yeah.
stress coming in from all different avenues. So one, I was at university at the time,
Yeah.
and I think what was I started to realize at some point was that I'd been carrying a lot of stress in my system, and more like beyond just stress. For me, it felt like deeper, like inauthenticity in life, like
Right.
an anxiety of not being myself and just carrying down this path around people, around uh, what I was doing in life. And I'd noticed it in high school, and then I was in university, and
Hmm.
my mind each year was like, is something going to change? Is something going to change? Like, am I going to keep going down this road where I just feel like I'm not me in my
Right.
life,
Well,
and
let's go back a little bit more, even.
yeah, yeah,
University, high school. Let's go. How was your childhood like? Was there crazy trauma or was it just, um,
yeah. That's a good question. I like that because, yeah, for me, the childhood was actually good. Like the
yeah,
family environment was fine. It was good. Like a nice close family, which I think is good to acknowledge, because for a lot of people, it is like a lot of stress loaded up in the nervous system from toxic environment growing up, like family, and a
hmm,
lot of trauma. But even so, for me, it was like great childhood, and then it was around high school when
right.
something shifted for me, where it was like life was cool, flowing, just happy, enjoying things. And then high school started out good, and having gone down this journey of figuring out what happened, it was like, yeah, stuff around social things that made the nervous system not feel safe. So it
Right.
was like, in like on in sports groups and all of that, where you say something and then people respond in a way, and then my nervous is like, whoa, it's not safe to be me, basically. Like I can see it from that
Right.
perspective.
So
No
like peer
way.
pressure, friendships, bullying,
Bullying,
uh,
yeah.
cliques, and all that stuff that goes with high school, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. And specifically like I found in the like the male sports groups that I was in, there was a lot of like what I came to learn later on my journey, that I had this like very sensitive nervous system, which is great in the healing space, like now I can help people and all of that. But in high school, it's like you pick up on all of these emotions and all of that, and now you have to like just suppress that and hide it. And it was
Survive.
like
You're surviving. You're literally they
surviving.
become your tigers, right? In your
Exactly.
environment.
And
Wow.
that was that. And like, it got more, like intense during high school. Was like that more and more of a survival state, where it was like a lot of my close friends left, and I was just like, in like every day showing up to school was just like, fuck, like this is
Yeah.
gonna be like tough, like getting through this. It was just somewhere where the body and the nervous system and I just didn't feel safe to show up. And it was exactly that. It was like it was a survival just to get through every day. And it wasn't always that bad. Like that's, looking
Yeah.
back at what
Yeah.
was kind of, there was obviously good times and bad times and all of that. But I would say there was this building pressure, this internal pressure cooker,
I think a lot of people went through that, like
yeah.
everybody, right?
Yeah,
But some
exactly
more
right.
than others. Some more than
That's
others,
the
but
school system. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some kind of seem to manage to scrape through and like make the most of the environments. And it looked like I was doing that from the external perspective. It's like, oh, cool. He's doing well with this and that. And then I was at university and doing well academically, active, busy, really busy. That was the key, right? Busy, um, busy academic, busy sports, busy social life, but deep down like not satisfied, not feeling like myself. Again, this was the key. It was like I'd uh had that early kind of shift into a survival state where it was now just projecting this persona that worked,
yeah,
so it was like, when I'm around these people, be like this, that works, that's what they
right.
want to see. And then things flow smoothly. Like I don't have to feel threatened around these people, be like that.
What
um
about relationships, toxic
yeah,
relationships, trying to, fit in to get that girl to like you, or and also the
yeah.
drinking, the partying. Where did you get sucked into
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, and that was, again, there was fun times for sure, and
Yeah,
like the um when you're in that world, for me it felt like the only, um yeah, that's what life was, was like, okay, you do the difficult stuff and then you go out drinking with your friends and you go and socialize and all of that. And
hmm,
then yeah, there was a relationship. And looking back now, I see all relationship as being an important catalyst, even like these toxic relationships, to open you up, to kind of
yeah,
really get things shifting, which is what happened with me. Like, I kind of hadn't been in a relationship growing up, and then towards the end of my high school career and throughout university, I got into a kind of relationship with this girl, and it
yep,
was, it was like a high school relationship where there was like on and off and on and off, and then it eventually turned into like a more serious thing. Um, but still, it didn't, and I can see why it had to happen. Like I see it as uh, really forcing me to open up emotionally in certain ways. Like it
yeah,
really did kind of, yeah. You learn a lot through it, but again, there was this deeper part of me that knew that this wasn't like a really long connection that I wanted to be in. Yet I found it going on and on and on. And again, it was this not feeling safe to express what I really wanted, where it
hmm,
was like, um, I'm not really happy in this, but it's working, and it's going to make her really sad. It was like a little bit of that, where I didn't want to hurt the other person, so I just kept on going. And this was part of that feeling of, am I just really going to keep on going down this path that like I know it's not really me? And it's funny, like looking at what eventually happened with all the illness. I remember having this thought in my mind, like around the people I was hanging out with, the relation, because that was the thing with the relationship as well. Like the friends group really wasn't suited to like my more genuine self. It was like, again, just kind of trying to fit in with the people around her because there was a relationship and all of that. And I remember thinking to myself, is like, is this going to be my life? Am I really just going to let it keep going like this? And I could feel there was nothing in me that had the balls almost to like pull myself out of this situation, where it's just like, it's just easier to just keep showing up, to keep
it's
going.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting how I was the same way. I was And it was everything was actually normalized. I was like, this is what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to be drinking. I'm supposed to be partying. They're supposed to treat me like shit. I'm growing
Yeah.
a thick skin. This is normal life, right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you keep doing that path,
Yeah,
and you don't make changes, right? I was lazy. I didn't have enough fear to drive me, and then the perfect storm happens, and it's forcing you to wake up and make the
exactly.
changes, which
Exactly.
is interesting. And it's like this is where the spirituality thing comes in. It feels like these people before you were born. It's like you guys have like a script that was set
Mm.
on your lap, and you're like, okay, she's gonna come into your life, and
Hmm.
she has a role to play, and you're gonna feel the effects, so you can get the contrast of what you really don't want, and kind of wakes you up. And yeah, she's
Yeah.
gonna be, you're gonna feel like it's a waste of time, but no, she's got a really important role to play, and she might, you're gonna have this narcissist come into your life a little bit later, and that's gonna be right. So it's
Yeah.
like that's what I believe
Yeah.
anyway.
I totally agree with that. Exactly. Where it's like the right, and like at a certain point, it felt like that relationship had served its purpose, but it
Yeah.
wasn't all like, I want to say, it wasn't all like negative. I think it's like you meet the right person at the right time for your level of, you're both like at that level of, you could call it consciousness or whatever, where you're at on your path. And we both kind of helped each other evolve to a point. And then it's
Mhm.
like, you can feel once you hit that ceiling, and it's like now you're just holding on out of fear. That's what it was for me. It was like
Yeah.
there was learning and growing there, and now it was like, and now we're going separate. And if you kind of hold on to it, uh it's gonna just start to feel worse and worse and worse. And yeah, that's what it felt like. Yeah.
You know what? That's I noticed that with anything in life. It's if it's not authentically, expressing yourself, or it's not the path that you're supposed to go on, you start to notice that it's such a resistance. Everything's not working
Yeah.
out, right? Or if, I'm doing a carpet cleaning business, and, it was great in the beginning, but now everybody's complaining, my equipment's
Yeah.
breaking, that nothing's working. And then you do this other
That's like
thing and everything's working so easily. And it's like,
right.
maybe that's my path. Maybe I'm supposed to, right? Just like with relationships, all
Exactly.
of a sudden nothing is working out. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you got to move. This has got to move on. This is, your higher self's going over here.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. And then, like, and so we've been down a little bit this part. Like now where we're at, it's like kind of quite obvious, when it's like, okay, this business isn't working and this is working. I need to flow with what's working, But it's like before that, we just try so hard to fight it. Or like that's how it was for me,
Yeah.
where it's like
Yeah.
I don't, it was too painful because for me, this goes back to the emotion stuff where it was like there was so much emotion that was going to come out now, as this was really kind of like we were really breaking this connection. Like, okay, we're done. And then it was like, nope, I would rather just stay in the inauthentic because it's I don't
Yeah.
have to face all of that. Yeah.
I think this is an important topic actually because
Yeah.
I think many people that are in the mind body space that are not moving forward are stuck in a relationship, and they're in denial that
Mm.
they have to, like I tell them, you got to make the choice. You got to make the hard choices,
Yeah.
whether it's a job that's toxic and you're staying because it's, you don't have the strength to leave, or this you're with this person who's a narcissist, or you guys are just not good with each other anymore. It's toxic. He
Yeah.
cheated on you, right? And you keep being in denial mode. Go, no, we're gonna make it work. It's actually also my fault, right? Denial.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
making excuses. Actually, no, it's my fault. We're gonna try to make it work. I'm like, all right, good luck with that. Because I'll tell
Yeah.
you, if you're in that relationship, you got 20 tigers in the room. It's going to be
Yeah.
really difficult for you to calm your nervous system down because you literally have real tigers in the room, and the nervous system has
Yeah.
its job, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make those hard choices, but people aren't, and that's the
That's
problem.
it's such a good point. Like, to why do people get stuck? Because I see this on like my YouTube channel often, is like these things, and it's like this is the difference. Like, are you? Yes, it might blow shit up in your face. This
Yeah.
is like I made a
It's gonna
couple of these
suck.
really hard. Yeah, it's gonna suck, and it did. It was like, and like one of the questions you mentioned was like, what brought up, and it was like I was in crisis when that relationship ended. Like I was just like my whole world was falling apart because this was when the illness started to like play out, the symptoms and all of that. And it's like if I was just to kind of keep staying in that, it's like this kind of numbed out state. It's something in me knew it was like, as the symptoms started to pop up in my life and my health started to become a challenge, something deep down in me knew that it was like, remember that voice a while back that said like, am I just really going to continue down this path forever? What's going to happen to me? Like, surely something in me knew that that's not going to work out for you. And it's something in me knew again. It was like, and it was almost the way I saw it was like it was a relief that I finally had a reason to put myself first. Like that was what it really was
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we need to break up. And then it was like, no, 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 let's get back together. And it's like, okay, let's try and make it work. Kind of like you were saying, like, let's try and make it work. And
Over
then
and
it was
over
like,
again. Like 20 times. I've had that. You try to make it work 20 fucking times. You break up 23 times. You block
yeah,
each other off Facebook. You add each other back. That whole
yeah,
bullshit.
exactly. Like all of that. And then eventually it was like, I need to like it was a relief that it was like my body is telling me that I can't do this anymore, And I didn't maybe think about it like I can put it in different words now, but still something in me knew was like, I'm sorry, I have to do this for myself. I have to figure out, like, I'm in a crisis and I need to figure out what the fuck is going on. And then it was like, yeah, okay, now that hard choice was done. And now I could go down the healing path. And it got a lot, like, we can get a little bit more into that. Like, it still got a lot worse from there, but it's these kind of decisions, I think, that is like what allows you to proceed on the path. Whereas if you just kind of continually like, yeah, but I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of
This
where
is
I'm coming.
where this is where I had a problems doing that, making that choice. I
Yeah.
just wasn't strong enough. So I was almost pushing them to break up with me. And
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
you know what's a gift? When they cheat on you and then it forces change. It forces, well,
Yeah.
I can't. No, they cheated. I'm hurt. I'm broke. We're done. And they move on with
Yeah.
somebody else. I know it hurts. I know it's the worst thing in the world, but it's actually a gift because it's forcing
Yeah.
that change that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you feel like, you need something to really break it off. And yeah, I totally get that. That same feeling is like you don't feel like you can quite do it. So you just like, maybe you become worse and worse in the relationship, hoping that it's just going to drive them away or something like that. But yeah, I think we all have that fear of taking the next step.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I've had that
yeah.
fear over and over again. And I was lucky that they left me, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though it's the worst feeling in the world, right? And you feel broken
Yeah.
every time it happens. And it's, your allostatic loads build up. But now thinking back, I'm grateful that they did that for me. They
Yeah.
had played their role and they had the bigger balls than I did
Yeah.
to end
Yeah.
it and cheat or whatever they had to do so
Yeah.
I could, move on with life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like short-term pain, but it's the right direction. Yeah.
Right. So then tell us about some of the perfect storm when it comes to the symptoms. What were you dealing with symptom wise?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So to bring it back to the health journey now. So
Yep.
that's good because the relationship was what was boiling things up because it was like that was bringing a lot of stress and change into my life. And I think that's what was triggering a lot where I was like, I'd been in the relationship for like 2 years. And then it was
Hmm.
like, okay, this is ending. No, it's not. This is ending. No, it's not. And my mind and my body was just like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. This is so stressful. I don't know whether we should stay together because a part of me still wanted to. I don't know whether we should let go. And this is what was bringing the stress and the turmoil into my life. And then I
Yep.
got COVID, and that there again there was a lot of fear because this was 2020, so it was really early on in the pandemic. Like in South Africa, people were getting COVID, but I didn't know anybody in the town that I lived in or anybody personally that had it yet. So I can again look back as how this was really uh like an unknown, so I got sick, and again there was so much global fear that I think that
Yep.
had a lot to do with like wiring my nervous system's perception of this. So then I got, I was sick for like 2 3 weeks, and it was like a really bad flu. Like it was bad, but it wasn't like, I was on death's door or anything. But then I try to get back into my life, so then I was like, okay, let's go do some exercise, because before that I was doing a lot of exercise. I was like pushing myself hard. I was always in the gym. I was like doing different sports and all of that. So at the time I was doing a lot of cycling, so I got back into cycling, and then I didn't feel like 100%, right? So I was like, okay. And this was the first time I'd had some kind of a health uh yeah, like a health challenge in my life, where it's like normally
Yeah.
I get sick and then I get better and then I throw myself back into whatever I'm doing. And now I was like, so this started to go on for a bit. It's like, okay, go exercise. Sure, I'm not feeling good. And at the same time, nobody was talking about long COVID yet, but COVID was this
Right.
big unknown where, people were dying from it. And I was like, okay, I'm pushing myself and now I'm not feeling good. And then I would go to the doctor and he's like, yeah, you've just had COVID for like 3 weeks. We don't know. They did some checks and they said, okay, you're fine. They gave me some vitamin infusions and take this supplement, take that. And, like a lot of people have really bad experiences with the doctor. It was just they didn't know. They had nothing to refer to, like in that they didn't understand the whole nervous system, mind, body space. And it was just like, we don't know. So this was going on for a couple of months. And then eventually I just, I just kind of went back to doing my thing. But there was this this new health concern that was in my life where I was like, anytime that things would get a little bit too much, these symptoms would kind of start to come up. And that was building into this perfect storm again, because it was like, now, because I was so young and so active as well, it was like, this is scary. Like, why am I not okay? Now it's been like 2 months after COVID, and there's still this lingering symptoms. And
It all
then
makes
this,
sense because
yeah,
before this all happened, you're like a bit of a not a spark, but like a flame surrounded by gasoline. So you're already your nervous system's very sensitive, and then this
yes,
COVID shit fear shit happens, which brings it up more, right?
yeah,
And then you get it, which is like a bomb going off. Your allostatic loads are already full, and then you got this. Oh, I wish I had another bottle. You had this other bottle being poured all over it, hardcore. And then you
yeah,
got the
yeah,
fear behind it still backing that up. And then you got the doctors go, well, we don't know until you, right? So you're
yeah,
just
yeah, exactly.
totally pouring gasoline on this survival state. So yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, that's a good point. Exactly. And it starts, the longer it goes on for, the more concerning it gets, the more like stress builds up around it. Whereas like, okay, this is getting weird now, like now it's been 3 months. And another point that's just is helpful. So like I started going to all different doctors, right? So I was like, okay, I'm still not feeling, I'll get back into exercise, and then my breathing would be like, it wasn't anything bad yet, but it was that lingering
Hmm.
thing. And then I would go to a new doctor. Okay, let's scan my lungs, let's scan my heart. Organs are fine. There's nothing that they can pick up there. So then they started prescribing me antidepressants, because they were like, and I was like getting really bad headaches, and I was getting, I had this anxiety, depression that I'd been carrying throughout like high school.
Yeah.
This feeling of just not feeling myself. And then they
Yeah.
they asked like, okay, you've got these tension headaches, you've got this like stress and anxiety, like what could help is some antidepressants. And part of me was like, sure, let's try it. Like I've been feeling like miserable for a while, for a long time, like deep
Did
down.
you do the
Like,
questionnaire? Did they here fill out the questionnaire, see if you qualify, and like, everything's like, you scored perfect for needing to
yeah,
have the
not
meds.
actually. I did some questionnaires later on with other doctors, but with the antidepressants, they were just like, do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So then they gave it to me.
Fuck.
But it's like
Shit.
pretty
It's true.
easy.
It's like before
Um,
they nowadays it's like they don't even ask you. You get into the room, here's the meds already. Dude, I was
yeah,
gonna say I'm gonna here, I'm feeling pretty good. I was gonna no, it's they already got the fucking thing for you. They don't even, ask
yeah,
you how you're
exactly.
doing. Are you living a stressful life? They used to
Yeah,
do that,
yeah,
right? Not so much anymore.
yeah,
I've noticed.
yeah. So that was like, I remember that the period with the antidepressants was like, then we're trying different ones. So like the first one was like, it was like an SNRI, so it's got the serotonin and the norepinephrine, which was actually fine. Like looking back at everything else I tried later, like that
Hmm.
didn't. I did feel a little bit more like chilled in social environments, not that same like anxiety and that like on edge
Right.
feeling.
Yeah.
And then, but then that was for like a month or two, and then but there was definitely side effects. Like my emotions were like dulled, and kind of these things. So eventually I was like, I don't want to be on this long term. Like they said, maybe we tried for a bit. So I went off that, and
Yeah.
then I was like, I was starting to get a lot of fatigue, right? So um then they put me on like a more of a stimulant kind of thing, and that I think added a lot to the stress in the nervous system, because it just we kept on upping the dose a bit. So it was
Yeah.
like I still, there was Wellbutrin, which is like dopamine and norepinephrine, and the norepinephrine is like, as soon as you increase more and more norepinephrine levels, that's like really like taking a stimulant.
Hmm.
And I think at the time it helped me. So just to jump ahead a little bit, right? So like now the relationship was ending, the health had been going on for a bit, and I was entering my final year of university, and this was adding more to the perfect storm. So I was like, uh, not sleeping. I was just like up all night, like writing economics papers, and I was like bad at managing my workload. And I would always just wait until like exam time, and then just like absolutely burn myself out. And then I was taking this kind of stimulant, and again, it was just like I kind of finished that semester of university like with the health thing ramping up, right? I'd been to more and more doctors, and I was starting to get like, now that this was the period where I was like, it had been maybe like 6, 7 months after COVID. This was, I would say, the actual perfect storm. Everything else was like the building up. The
Yep.
perfect storm was now like, okay, fuck, like I just barely got through that year of university by the skin of my teeth. I actually got like my best results ever. So like I nailed it
Oh,
academically, but the toll I could feel, I was like, that I'm just like, yeah, what is going on here? And the real thing was just like fear and anxiety about my health that like I'd never had before. That it was now 7 months and it was getting worse and worse and worse.
mhm.
And that was when I made another. And this is so like you mentioned at the beginning about speaking about like groups and all of the online stuff. And this was when I was going down that rabbit hole more and more because none of the doctors, nobody was talking about long COVID yet, but I was finding it online. So I was like, okay, you
Yeah.
know, persistent symptoms after COVID, what's going on? And then more and more and more. And like doctors were saying, no, we don't know, we don't know. So like I was just like, okay, I'm gonna figure this whole thing out myself, like I think many people do. And you just start
Right.
researching. And this again is adding to all of this fear and stress around the health where I would, ended up on Reddit, long COVID forum, and that is just like from that moment on, you start to get more and more symptoms because you're reading
Yeah.
everybody like, I had COVID and I had this and this and this and this and this, and I was like, oh yeah, I had those. I didn't even notice these, but now I'm gonna look out for them, because
Yeah.
maybe, and they're like, just keep track of your symptoms. Like the more symptoms you notice, just keep track, like be hyper vigilant, and it's like,
Oh, fuck. That's like the
and now
opposite.
yeah, and now it's like, oh
Put
shit,
more
I'm not.
fire into it. No, you put more gasoline on the fire, pour more.
You wonder like, why am I noticing more and more symptoms? And it's just like that cycle of, um,
Yeah.
and then I ended up on the CFS kind of subreddit, and that is honestly one of the like, I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's like such a, specifically the one on Reddit is so toxic. Like it's just
Mm.
insanely like demoralizing. Like you just go on there, and anybody that posts a recovery story gets removed, and it's just like,
Right.
you're gonna be stuck with this for like 10, 20 years unless you really don't do anything that gives you symptoms. So this was all the information I was getting, and at that point I was like, okay, I'm getting pretty like worried now. Like if I and I was noticing it more and more with exercise. So it's like I go to the gym and I come back feeling like absolutely drained. I go this and I come back feeling
So like
absolutely drained.
you had like post-exertion malaise,
Yeah.
CFS, um, anxiety. Did you have any food sensitivities, any other?
That all started to come a bit later. Was
Okay,
like
okay.
I was having this like, and it wasn't even like really bad CFS yet, but it was like, this post exertional malaise and this kind of anxiety and this fear of this health anxiety as well. Like, what is this? And
Right.
then I was like, okay, I spoke to a few doctors and they were like, if you keep on getting it after exercise, then just stop exercising. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stop exercising for like a month or two, just completely see what happens. I'm going to stop university because basically what I got from the CFS forums was like so much information that anything that, and there's some truth in it, but the
Yeah,
approach to it
yeah.
is just way wrong. Where it's like anything that's going to increase your stress bucket is going to lead you to a severe state. And I was like, I'm in a mild state currently, but these people like on the forums, they've been here for 30 years, and they're like, the only
Oh
way that I got
man.
here is from getting into the severe state. So like, do whatever you can to not have any emotional stress, not have any cognitive stress,
So
and
we
not have
assume
any.
that they're the experts because they've dealt
Yeah,
with this for 30 fucking years. But
exactly.
reality is they've been doing it fucking wrong for 30 fucking
Yeah.
years.
There's a reason those are like it's those groups are the worst possible space because it's like the people that are left there are the ones that have done the wrong approach, and
And they're
everybody that
miserable.
and they're
They're miserable.
miserable,
And they want
and
you to be like them. Yeah.
anybody that gets out, their stuff gets removed. Like I started to see this later where someone will
Oh
post a
man.
recovery story, it'll be removed. So all that's left is the fear and the miserable stuff, and there's no like hope or anything. And that
Same
kind
thing on
of
Facebook. Facebook, same shit. They had all the thousand groups, same
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Reddit, toxic, horrible. Yeah,
yeah,
and what pisses me off is that when some of these groups have 44,000 people on them, and some of these moderator Karens, they're taking it upon themselves to be in charge of these people's lives and go, nope, I'm not going to allow you to, have any hope or
yeah,
anything. We're going to keep brainwashing you with the wrong shit that keeps you sick. And that
yeah.
affects a lot of people's lives. Like
It does.
that's fucked up.
It does. Is exactly the case. So yeah, so with all of that, that was what led me. Okay, so I even started interacting with people. I was like, okay, this is my situation. I've been sick for this long. What do you guys suggest? Again, like you said, you assume these are the experts, and like it felt good because you it felt like I was being accepted as well. Where I was like, this is I'm really sick,
Yeah.
and you're accepted when you're and same. Some of the people were really like supportive and compassionate because now you're stuck with them. You're sick as well, and I was like, wow, these people are really supportive, where I was like, I'm really struggling. And they're like, shame, like be careful. And basically they're like, quit university, like don't go back. It's not a good idea. And I was like, okay, quit university, quit exercise. I moved back home to stay with my parents, and I was like, I need to figure this thing out, right? This whole health thing, this became my priority. And again,
Yep.
while that was like making things worse because it just was all done out of fear, and it was just this kind of closing the world, get smaller, smaller, smaller. Um, at least it put me like down this full on like what we were talking about earlier, where some people get stuck. Where I was just like, I'm cutting out everything, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And it
Yep.
started off down the wrong path. And then this was again when the food stuff started to happen as well, where it was like, okay, so what am I going to try? Okay, I'm going to try diets. Like everybody on the long COVID path was like, I was like scanning what's anybody that's getting better. What have they done? And all I was seeing was a few people that did like really crazy low histamine diets, where they were like, cut out sugar, caffeine, alcohol, and that was like what I started with. And then it was like, am I getting better? No. Okay. I've cut out exercise. I've cut out stress. Okay. They start cutting out foods, right? Like what's going to kind of bring me, I just want to keep on getting to this baseline that everyone talks about, get to a baseline and then you can start building it up. But I was like, I'm not getting to a baseline. I'm getting worse.
Yeah, there's no
Because
baseline. It's shit everywhere.
exactly. And it's like this idea of just keep closing down until you get to a baseline. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So the food sensitivities came more from like cutting foods out and then later trying to reintroduce them, and now they were perceived as a threat. It wasn't like, I know for other people it's maybe you get the sensitivities early on, but for me it was like, okay, I'm going low histamine, which was like super restrictive and eliminative, and I'm going to do it for a month and see what happens. And then that was kind of, that month became, okay, let's go off it now. And then I was too afraid because like I'm not better, but I also don't want to do anything that's going to make it worse. So it's like,
Yeah.
let me just stick with this, it feels safe. And I feel like, I can look at it from the perspective that it was all negative and all of that, but I also see it as like it was cutting out variables at least. It's like, okay, I've tried the diet. I'm on this. There's like no other variables going on. So that's what kind of kept on taking me towards eventually the things that worked. It's like we start with all of these things like
It's
the
not all
pace.
a waste. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it
like
has to, like the fact
you
that I
need to
went
do
so
the wrong
fully into
things to
all of
find the
them.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's because I dived so much into them where it was like, and a lot of people do this, where it's like, let's nail this diet. Let me nail my pacing like
Yeah.
100%. And obviously that's a lot of stress and pressure to put on me, which I eventually realized later was like, I was getting worse because, there was this like, so like I started doing like really restrictive activity scheduling and pacing where it was like, if I do anything, then I have to rest for like an hour afterwards. And it was like 1 to 2. So I was like, if I do 30 minutes of talking to like a family member, then I have to just go lie down for an hour and not do anything. And then it was like
Shit.
in this hour, it was like, oh no, like I'm not relaxed. Like I need to be relaxed. And it was like, again, this was like all this pressure. And then when I wouldn't get it right, when I would be like, okay, I'm going to distract myself, or I would just talk, just get into the flow of a conversation and just talk and talk and talk. And I could feel it was like, overwhelming me a little bit. And then that fear was like, oh no, I'm getting overwhelmed. And it was just like the
Right.
pressure of the pacing was like really, like I couldn't get it
Well, your
perfect.
responses were the exact opposite of what you should be responding because
Yeah,
you're saying this is dangerous. I'm in survival. There are ligers here, like
yeah,
constantly. Yeah,
exactly.
that
Exactly. It
makes
was
sense.
this, I don't remember. So that was all. That was like, this was basically the first year and a half where it was just like all of this, the wrong stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
But it served its purpose because I was always going to go down that path until I'd been down that path and it didn't work. It's like you have to kind of clear it out of the system and then be like, okay, I'm ready to try something else now.
Yeah.
And I was you're still searching for a specialist, right? So who can help me? And I did find someone that was helpful. She was a physiotherapist in South Africa, And I found
Hmm.
it just like through some rabbit holes online. I was like long COVID South Africa, and then there was a university professor that had posted something about, we're helping people recover. So I contacted her, and she was like, work with this um, chronic pain specialist. She's a physiotherapist, and she has a good understanding of chronic pain, which is similar to long COVID. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I contacted her, and this was the first starting to understand everything a little bit more. So she was, again, we didn't get everything right from the beginning, but it was a shift in understanding where she was like, okay, you need to understand your brain, you need to understand your nervous system. That
Hmm.
you're not actually, I was still fixated on reading papers about, I was really focused on COVID, where I was like, it's the
Right.
spike proteins, maybe it's
Right.
vascular damage. It's like, if I can figure out what it is, I'm going to keep on reading the medical papers, and eventually someone's going to post something that's going to save me. And she
Yeah.
was like, it's it's not actually like anything's messed up in your body from COVID. It's that your brain and your immune system and your nervous system is kind of stuck in this fear state, in this fight or flight state. And it was,
When she
and
told
we
you
had
that, did you buy it?
well,
Were
that
you
was the
like,
thing, right? When we were talking first, a part of me was like getting a lot of hope, where like she explained it quite well, and there was like it was also the first time being fully heard, so like there's a real power in that. Like
right.
she let me
Yeah.
tell my whole story, and she was very uh she was very open and compassionate because she does a lot of work with people with trauma and all of that, so she knows how to listen and kind of hold space and all of that. So that just felt really good, and you can feel like when you're in the right kind of presence. And but then afterwards, right? So you told me all of this. Then the call ended. Like that was our first session, and then all the doubt comes crashing in. Whereas like so again, I started to research it. So it was like central nervous system sensitivity and chronic pain. So I go research like, is this what CFS is? And then immediately go down the rabbit holes of like all the people that are trying to disprove it. Like, okay, oh, this
Oh,
person wrote the paper why CFS is a physical illness and it cannot be cured by
oh.
all of this kind of stuff. And then immediately it was just like all that hope was completely squashed out, where it was like, I was really excited about this. And yeah, then I spoke to her again and kind of expressed a little bit of my concerns. And anyways, we started working together, and it's important, like you said, though. There was a lot of fear and a lot of doubt and a lot of skepticism at first, but I feel like, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, something deeper and authentic inside of you knows when you're like starting to kind of find you find, again, to put this in more of a spiritual perspective, you find the things when you're ready for them, but it's still going to challenge you. But it's like, am I going to fight this? Or something in you realizes that, okay, there's something here, even if I'm skeptical of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like a little bit of an inner knowing, but we don't always listen to it. Our ego
Yeah,
fucking takes
exactly.
takes charge or whatever.
And you know what, you have to, again, it was like key that I'd done all that other stuff where I was like, well, nothing else works, so there's something here. I'm gonna try it. And this, I think,
Yeah.
was key that started to open me up to all these other things, because I was very rational, skeptical, and I was very scientific as well. I was like, I just want to understand all of this kind of stuff. And
That's
she
actually, let's highlight that. It was good for you to do all the wrong things because you've done them all. So
Yeah,
even though I have the doubt about this thing, I'm gonna do it too. And if you didn't do
exactly.
all the wrong things, you might have not kept doing that new thing, right?
Exactly. That was the key. I wouldn't have been open. Like I remember talking, once I started talking about this online, I was like, so then later on I found brain retraining, and that got me up a lot. And I'd seen brain retraining earlier on, and I was just like read other people's opinions on it, and I was like, that's a load of horse shit. That's not going to get me anywhere. And then eventually I was like, okay, now I'm ready to try it.
Yeah.
So some other key points was that this physiotherapist, her name was Tracy Prowse, and um, she she had a background in mindfulness and meditation as well. So this became a huge part of my journey, right? It's like other people have all different aspects. For me, like mindfulness and that path and meditation going deeper and deeper, this was where it started as well. So I'd started doing a little bit of meditation. I'd never done it before in the past.
Yeah.
I used this app called Waking Up by Sam Harris, and basically it started like I read on a CFS forum that someone was like, if you're having a crash, try meditating. It might help reduce it a little bit. And I did it, and I was like, oh wow, that helps a lot. And then I was like, there's often that initial resistance to like oh, okay, like it's uncomfortable to actually just stop and put away all distractions and kind of sit and meditate. I was like,
Yeah.
I would often get caught up in that, not wanting to do it. But
Yep.
there was something in me that was realizing that, okay, maybe I would not do it for weeks. And then I would sit and do a meditation. And it wasn't really like visualization stuff. It was like, just meditating, just noticing the thoughts, just kind of, coming back into what you're experiencing. And I would
Which
know,
is which is
I
different from what I learned what meditation was. Because for
yeah,
me, I learned meditation was quiet your thoughts and think of nothing. And for
yeah,
me, that was really hard because my brain would hijack me, and that was the word. So I couldn't do meditations. I had to do visuals and allowing.
yeah.
So in a way, you were
Yeah.
doing kind of the same thing, but just a different like face in a way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think we all start like now I teach people that, and I was like, we all start with that. Oh, I have to quiet my mind. These were the kind of, and it started a little bit with like that, but I found like the right guided meditations, and on this app, Waking Up, I recommend it to anybody that's like starting out in meditation because it's got really good guided meditations, but it also gets into some really deeper kind of wisdom stuff that's not just calming the nervous system or anything like that. And that's what was speaking to me. It sparked my curiosity as well. And this is where I talk about things like awakening and that on my channel now, where it was like something in me was getting more and more curious about because I was suffering so much and because my whole old life was being stripped away. I was like, okay, what the fuck is actually going on here? Like I was studying economics, I was like going
Yeah.
down this path, and now I had all this free time as well. Like initially I was doing it to like
Yeah.
research all the healing, and then I started reading books about uh, philosophy, and I started with like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and like some Stoic stuff, which was helpful because it put my suffering in a different perspective for me. It was like, okay, here's some people like this guy Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp and he saw the beauty of life even in the most horrific kind of circumstances. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna embrace this, so that laid some foundations of like, okay, I'm gonna embrace this. And then I started reading more and more philosophy because something in me was, again, this was like this whole new world that was opening up. I'd always been kind of like we're talking about, like drinking, socializing, exercising, partying. Now I wanted to like understand what life was about. I was like, okay, like let me read all this philosophy, let me read all this physics. But it was challenging because, reading very intellectual stuff, I would like quickly get brain fog. But at the same time, I was like, there was something that was lighting this up in me. And that's when the meditation stuff really, like a whole bunch of points just started to come together where it was like, okay, this is helping my symptoms. Like I'm learning meditation because it's making me feel better. But also, and that guy, Sam Harris, he was like my first proper teacher, I would say. He was great for me at the time because he was a neuroscientist, a philosopher, but he'd also studied like meditation for like 10 years with some like really well-renowned teachers in like uh, Tibet and kind of been on some like really intensive retreats. And this was like, okay, this is why I was starting to open up to this more spiritual, deeper path, because I was like,
Mhm.
I want the rational, the science, and all of that. But he's telling me that there's some deeper exploration here. There's something to explore about the nature of me and my thoughts and like being conscious in this experience. And that was for me a really good path to go down because it was more than just healing. It was more than just, okay, like I'm doing this to get better. It was like like it was speaking to, again, like my higher self, my deeper kind of interest, my more authentic interest, where I was like, okay, like I'm interested in this. So yeah, that was starting to power. I guess I was starting to meditate more and more. It was becoming a bit more consistent. I started doing it like, again, it was sporadic at the beginning, and then it was like, okay, let's do this twice a day for 10 minutes. Let's do it. Um,
Yeah.
and then I would still take a break. Let's do it a little bit more. Let's do it a little bit more. And it was making me so much more conscious and aware of like, wow, what's going on? Like a lot more present. And I could feel these shifts happening. And yet at the same time, I was still struggling. Like, so another shift that happened around that time, I was like more on the healing side of things, was I ended this whole strict pacing. Like I'd done that even with that physiotherapist that I was working with for a while. She was great, but she was also like, let's reduce the stress. Let's reduce the stress. But she also encouraged me, okay, we've reduced it now. Let's take some steps. Let's do more exposure stuff, which was exciting at first. I was like, okay, cool. So like, you can go for a swim, go down to the beach and go for a swim because I live quite close to the beach here, and that was
Yeah.
something I really missed doing. And it was exciting at first, but it led to these big flare ups, where it was like, now, okay, I'm exposing myself. And that was, in some senses, the hardest part of the journey because I was doing more and then I was really like having big crashes and flare ups from it. And it was kind of also just like really debilitating at the time where it was just
Right.
like, now it's been a year and a half. I thought I was, yes, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to get better. And now I'm still getting all these big crashes and flare ups. Um, but it was heading in the right direction now. Like I was no longer closing down my world. And I think this is a good point just for people that start to make that change. It's difficult at first. Like for me, it was a lot more uncomfortable than the spaces I was in. But at the
Yeah.
same time, there was like something that was like, okay, yeah, like I'm getting to go on walks again. I'm getting to do this again. And I'm having to deal with a lot when it happens, but it's like you're getting that ball rolling in a sense. And you start to get a little bit more of a, it's not all just doom and gloom. You're seeing the world a bit more. And one other thing that was really key was Raylan Eagle's YouTube channel. Um, I found her then, Raylan Eagle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
She's a
I just started
CFS. She's like mostly CFS stuff. Yeah.
yeah, CFS and but yeah, like there was a bit of stuff about long COVID and watching her multiple recovery stories really changed my beliefs about recovery. So I
Yep.
was just seeing, let's watch the most severe CFS. Like, what's the most severe case? Oh wow, this person was like completely bedbound. A couple of those where my mind was always like, if I saw anything about recovery or brain retraining, it was like, but that works for some people, maybe not for me. And now this was when I then tried brain retraining. Was I heard a couple of people that were like, yeah, I recovered pretty quickly. I was like really sick, and then I recovered pretty quickly.
Yep.
And then yeah, just to jump ahead a little bit, I then did DNRS that we spoke a little bit about in our conversation. We both
Yep.
did the DNRS with Annie Hopper and all of that. And again, it was good for me. Like we spoke a little bit about as well how there was limits to that. Like, and I hit that at the end, but it shifted this foundation of I'm going to make recovery happen for myself, and it
How
kind of
long were
was
you on
empowered.
DNRS for? How long did you do it for?
Probably like 3 months, I would say. Like
Okay.
I did the course, and I started doing like the daily, the daily brain retrainings, like the
Yeah.
whole fucking do the little things on the floor and
The Macarena.
um,
Hey, they almost in the
yeah,
Macarena.
stop, stop, stop,
Hey, stop, stop,
shift
stop.
there.
That was
And
triggering. I'm like, I can't remember all that shit and go in a circle and fucking this way and then 30
yeah,
degrees that way with your hand and fucking I don't know. I didn't do
yeah.
it.
But for me, there was and like I share this with people now, it's like whatever you try, find what feels right from it and take that and then use it in your own way. And I realized this
Yep.
is what happened was like eventually something in me was like, okay, yeah, there's a limit to this. But I did again, I started to do the stuff more intuitively. So I started with their whole kind of technique.
Mhm.
And what I got a lot out of it was the way they would teach you to talk from the wise self to the traumatized self, or the kind of the amygdala, right? The fear centers in the brain. And I would use that, and then I would just kind of go into like my own kind of would start like riffing it, where I was just like talk, okay, like it's okay, just take a break, you're trying so hard, the brain. And I think that set a real big foundation for me, like learning to stop fighting with my symptoms, to stop fighting with my illness as well, like the realizing, okay, it's all nervous system, but now I'm fighting against it. and
Yep.
and it started to unlock this kind of self-healing practices and techniques that I started using, where I was like, wow, I can shift my own state. It was like quite powerful. It was like there's nobody else here in the room, but I'm just pretending now that I'm like the wise self, and I'm like, hey, you're okay, you're doing your best. Like, and I would start to be like, wow, my body starts to relax a little bit, and like, wow, I can actually start to activate this feeling of like self-love and self-compassion. And
Mhm.
that's what I really took away from the DNRS. It was like, okay, I would do a little bit of the visualizations as well. Okay, I
Yep.
can imagine myself, going cycling again. And
Yes.
um, again, when I started to, like, I always was bad. Like, I'm not a very, my inner world was never very visual. So like,
Yeah.
I would try to do a visualization. And I'm like, yeah, I can't really get the details, but I just focus on like, how would that make me feel? If I was out there doing a cycling event or something like that, like, whoa, I'd feel amazing. And then it was like, okay, let's stay with that feeling. Let's stay with that feeling. So it
Exactly.
definitely got me like 50%. And it was like a huge shift. It was like, okay, wow, like, my perspective just changed and everything. It was like, okay, every symptom is good. Like the fact that I'm feeling symptoms, good. Let's be with it. Let's invite it. Like, I love you. You're welcome. Be here. And
Yeah.
I just like, it was a lot of money for me at the time. Like I had like almost no money, and like paying for that course, it set the thing where I was like, I don't care. Like, some people have done it and it worked for them, and some people have done it and it didn't work for them. I'm going to use it in any way that it works for me. And
Yes.
that was key, where I was like, I've spent this money, I'm committing now, and it is going to work. And that was powerful because, again, like I see other people that try these things, and it's like, you try it and it's like maybe like you get a little bit here, you get a little bit there. But for me, it wasn't, it was this commitment to like, I am going to heal myself now with whatever they
Well, yeah, a
give
lot of
me.
people are wishy-washy, right? And then
Yeah,
they complain that
exactly.
it doesn't work because they did it last Tuesday for 20 minutes, and the time before that was last August for 10 minutes. And they're like, it's
Yeah.
shit. It doesn't work, so I'm not gonna, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, right? And sometimes I think it's with pricing, when you have, the courses that are dirt cheap, you get a lot of wishy-washy, and you get a lot of
That
people
was
saying
the
it's shit.
thing. That price thing, like I remember I emailed them because again it was going to be a lot of money for me. I was like, is there any chance you can give me this course at like a reduced price? Like it's selling my whole story, like I'm really sick, and I wonder how many times I've heard that. and
Yeah.
um and then I was upset at first, but
The
eventually I
price
was
went
like,
up.
fuck.
Actually, we're gonna higher the price just because we want to motivate you.
Yeah,
Like,
it would be
fuck.
good. But eventually I was like, I deliberated on a while, and I was like, no, I need it. And I'm done staying stuck like this forever. So I'm going to do it. And exactly like you said, like that I bought myself into this, and I was like, okay, now you're not going to waste this opportunity. And yeah, so I did that for like 3 months, like training, training, training. And I got a lot better. Because what also shifted is I wanted symptoms to come now, so I was like,
Yep.
okay, what is the thing that I was most afraid of? I was really afraid of raising my heart rate. So I'd done a little bit of low intensity cycling, like go cycle for 15 minutes on a bike, but don't go near a hill. Go for a walk, but don't raise your heart rate. Now I was like, jump up and down until my heart rate goes up, and then like see, okay, what's coming? Like,
Bring it. Yeah, let's
is
do it. Let's
yeah,
fucking die. I want to let's do it. Bring it on. Like
yeah,
calling it on its bullshit. Give me more, right? Embrace that
exactly.
chaos.
Yeah, so that's definitely what the doing signing up and doing the brain retraining course, it was this massive shift in like, okay, cool, this is the direction we're going, we want this, bring it
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And for me, again, it was a lot of like this, um like, yeah, this kind of self-healing, um like acceptance as well, and just compassion, just like, it's okay, like you can be here, whatever's here, you can be here. um and then this is kind of what we're speaking about with we kind of had the same thing with the brain retraining, was then it started to get like a little bit, but I'm struggling with the negative thoughts. So like I was getting like a whole lot better, and then it was like, but I must get rid of those thoughts, and I must like feel into these ones, and like that's better. And eventually it just felt like a ceiling, right? I got in like 50%, but it was like, something in me was still feeling like this isn't right. And I was still
And
struggling, like I
the
would.
techniques you were learning to deal with those thoughts were a lot of resistance, right? Trying to
Yeah,
redirect, ignore,
exactly. So like what I noticed was the resistance had shifted. Like, okay, I was now okay with the symptoms, but the thoughts that are fighting with the symptoms, those are the bad things. So it's like, it was good, like you learned to release that resistance, but now resistance was here in the negative thoughts. And it was like, exactly, it was still resistance, and now I was struggling in that space. Okay, like, oh no, I'd be like washing the dishes, and it was like, oh no, I'm gonna have a crash. No, 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 that shouldn't be there. And it becomes, the battle just shifts somewhere else.
yeah.
And this, what worked for me there was now this the deeper aspect of meditation that I'd been exploring, that was still going on at the same time. So I was doing the brain retraining, and at the same time, meditating more and more, and starting to hear these people talk about like, these experiences of like deep peace and like deep stillness, and just a whole like shift in their experience of self as well. Like they didn't feel like a small self anymore. They felt like this more expanded, interconnected experience. So like that was kind of more my like philosophical, deeper interest, but it wasn't separate from all of the other stuff that was happening. But that was playing out at the same time, and I was trying to find uh, different teachers that were talking about this, and what they started to talk about, which was so important for what I was starting to struggle with in the brain retraining, was you're not your thoughts at all. So like anything that arises as a thought, it's just not you, right? And you just keep on getting pulled up into the thought. But and one teacher that I found that kind of really like just was so clear and precise with this. His name was Angelo DeLulo, and I was using his channel, his YouTube channel called Simply Always Awake, and his book called Awake. It's Your Turn, and it's themed more around these like this deep awakening shift. But what it really is, and it is powerful, but it's this breaking free from identifying with your thoughts, like believing that this little inner voice and all these thoughts and everything that's talking about me, none of it's actually real. It's all just thought. And this is what helped to deal with all of that resistance
Yeah, yeah.
to thoughts. Was like, okay, so I was doing a lot of meditation as well. And then it would be like, sometimes meditation is good. And sometimes what do I do about all these thoughts? You know, it's like, and it was the same in the DNRS. And then I read a chapter in his book about thoughts. And he was just like, the only reason any thought or even an emotion or anything is a problem is because there's another thought in the experience saying that shouldn't be here. There's something saying like, don't experience that thought. But he was like, if you just allow that thought to be here and the thought saying, I don't want to have that thought, and then any other thought that comes up, and then any emotion, if you just allow it, it's
Allow it
like,
all. Yeah.
allow it all,
It's
right?
fucking
And
all of
and
it.
it was like, wow, okay, that completely like addressed the issue that I was having with the brain retraining, where it was
It's
just like,
massive. It's like a huge moment in my life when that happened.
yeah,
Same shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was like, yeah, what I think some people call the awakening, whatever. It was just like, there's nothing to resist. Like, really?
Yeah.
And then you see what still comes up. But it was this fundamental fear of that there's something in my experience that can come up and mess things up that is really addressed, where it was like, there's really nothing to run from. Whereas before that, there was still this like, but something can come up and that's the bad thing, whether it's fear itself or
Yeah.
anything like that. It was like, and I remember like this being a big shift. Like I started to listen to it more and more, like of his meditations where he'd talk about this, and it was like started to sink in at a deeper and deeper level. And then I think one day, and things were starting to shift. I'd like start to do things. I'd go and exercise a little bit, and I'd go a little bit harder. And then the
Yep.
thoughts would start to come up. And in the past, I tried to brain retrain them away, and now it was just it's like I don't have to do anything about them. I was like I was cycling, and it was like, oh no, like this is. It was just like it became quite funny. Where it was like that's all just like that used to be so triggering, and now it's all just
Yeah.
and
It was horrible before. It was
yeah,
the before was me pacing in the room back and forth with my muscles going like this, trying to figure them out and analyze them and do opposites. And it was
yeah,
just right. And then I would try to engage in life. I'd go to the beach, beautiful day at the beach, but it was a fucking mental nightmare because I
yeah,
was resisting all the time. It's just crazy how you can bring the hell with you and it's a beautiful
yeah,
day.
exactly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I did find though that did like it did help to uh, shift things a little bit. Where I was like, okay, I can be in my apartment and just feeling like all of this stuff, or I can be on the beach and feeling all of this stuff. And it's better to be on the beach than to be in the apartment. So like that's at a point I do notice looking back, I started to spend a lot more time outdoors,
Mhm.
which was key. I was like, okay, because again, I would still have some crashes and flare ups. And then I would just notice everything and allow and allow and allow and be there. I would just be like, even if I'm having a crash or a flare up, like I'll feel like shit, but let me get into my car and go drive to like a space in nature or anything like that. And it was so much easier to now do this allowing or just to like nature has that effect on the nervous system
Yeah.
where it's like you're getting an external assistance here. And that was key. Like I would spend all the time that I could just like, okay, let me go sit and watch the sunset, even if I'm feeling like shit, which was key.
That's the
Whereas like in the past
That's the
was
really
like,
important part there.
yeah,
Because if you keep giving in to the hard days, you're gonna have hard days every day, and you're gonna get back into the cycle of not moving and being inside the house. For those days, I called those prime time. This is prime time where I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
stick to my routine. And when I feel like shit, I gotta make sure I still stick to my routine. I'm gonna go
yeah,
walk in nature, but I feel like this. But I'm gonna, especially now, I'm gonna go. This is prime time.
yeah,
I'm gonna do this double and do it no matter what.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's what really sends that message.
That's so key because you're not letting it dictate your life anymore. Like, okay, that can all be there and I'm still going to go. And then you'll often feel maybe you'll still feel it all, but you'll feel a little bit better as well because you're like,
It's
yeah.
true.
And this is what like the meditation was teaching me was like, stop paying so much attention to your mind. Like let it fucking natter on in the background and say all at once. And yet this tree and this sunset is still beautiful. Why don't I just focus on that? And it
Yeah.
was like, again, it was that shifting. And I would do this with everything. It was like, yeah, the mind's doing all this thing and the thoughts are there, but it's still like what's actually going on here, like paying more attention to like what's going on around me. And it was like, wow, it's quite a relief to not just have to listen to that, like, and believe it and react to it. That's the key. It's like, I know I don't have to react to it, whereas like you were saying in the past, it's like, so when that comes up, what's the strategy? What do I do here? How do I fix it? How do I fight it? How do I manage it? Whereas just like, if you don't make it into a problem, you just allow it to be there, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the difficult part because also with the physical symptoms, just because you feel like shit, right? It doesn't mean it's wrong. Like
Yeah,
like doing the work and everything, I feel horrible. I feel like shit. So I gotta abandon ship and stop doing that. But the thing
yeah,
is,
exactly.
usually you're gonna feel worse when you start, right? When
Yeah,
you start doing the work, these symptoms come up, flares come up. You need them. They're
yeah,
opportunities. And people, when they see them come up, they stop or
yeah,
they figure something else out, or they no, this is what you need to face to erase. You need to think
yeah,
of the symptom that's coming in as an opportunity to update the alarm system or whatever. So
yeah.
that
That's
can
that
be
was that was such a key foundation for me as well. And
yeah,
I think that is the foundation where it was like, this is good. Like and that's where the brain retraining was good because I like before I just did total allowing of everything. I've set this foundation where I was like, if any symptom comes up, I'm gonna welcome it. I'm gonna say like, hey, like, thank you for coming in. And this I was doing
yes,
like a lot of gratitude, but not gratitude to get away from anything, gratitude for what felt like the problem. So it was like, okay, that's not the problem. That's the opportunity. And that's such a key point to drive home is like if you lay that foundation, you can use it for everything. You can honestly
yes.
use it for everything. Like whatever comes up, it's like, yes, thank you. Come here. Come be with me. Like this space is for you as well. And
It's like you get a
yeah,
magic wand now, not just for physical symptoms, like life situations. Something falls in
yeah,
your lap, you're like, fuck, I don't like this. I'm gonna be honest with myself. I fucking don't like this. I'm gonna feel the
yeah,
feelings, but I'm not
yeah.
gonna
That's
do what I used to do. I'm gonna
yeah,
allow it, let it do its thing, and it usually 9 times out of 8 it works in your favor. This is where the
yeah.
magic wand goes. There we go. That worked out. Wow.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I like what you said. This is so key as well because this is when we start like bypassing and like brainwashing ourselves. It's okay to completely acknowledge the emotion and whatever it's making you feel. Like this was
Yep.
also what I learned from that guy Angelo, and this was one day when I had this big shift. He was like, because with brain training, I wasn't doing that. He was like, just be totally authentic. Be like, how authentic can you be with what you're feeling? Like, are you
Exactly.
feeling frustrated? Then feel frustrated. Are you feeling confused? Then feel confused. And I was like, oh, I was still trying to like, be positive. And it's like a balance, right? There's that foundation, but
Right.
the
The
first,
balance.
just like, yeah,
It is a
exactly. It's
balance.
balance. It is balance. You can get
Finding
stuck
that
in
sweet spot.
either one.
Because if you
It's that
if
sweet
you
spot. Yeah.
if you feel too much of that anger all day, you're refueling the
Yeah.
trauma loop, right? You're refueling
Yeah.
the spark. So you got to have a sweet spot. You go, I'm feeling the feelings. I feel like shit. Yeah, fucking, I hate this. I'm angry. Feel
Yeah.
it, pass it through your chest. Okay, let's go back and engaging and dance like a crazy person
Yeah.
smile, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it. Like for both aspects are true, but either and for people as well, you like it's completely okay that you're not always gonna be on this like perfect middle line. That's how you
Yeah,
find the
yeah,
balance is like, okay, you'll start to feel it, right? Something's feeling wrong. Oh yeah, I'm actually, like you said, I'm getting stuck in it. Like I'm feeling it and now I'm becoming attached to it and I'm seeing everything through this lens of anger. Okay, so let's swing back a little bit to the other side. Okay, like I'm in the like shifting into the positive, into the embracing the gratitude. Okay, but now something's coming up and that's feeling inauthentic. And it's like then you find the sweet spot, but it's you find it's through not getting it perfect. Like it's this dance.
right.
And
When
yeah,
before we were avoiding anything that was negative because it was looked at as it's going to affect your nervous system. So you're
yeah,
suppressing the emotions, which adds loads to your nervous system. This
exactly.
adds up, and you get more. symptoms because the alarm state, the baseline of survival goes up because you have that
Yeah.
inner battle. So it sends more alarms, and you're back into the cycle of
Yeah.
resisting the thoughts. And
Exactly.
there we go again, more symptoms, more bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I want to say along that is like, okay, so in the past we've been, like you said, we've been building up this load and it gets more and more pressure. And now we shift into allowing and acceptance and an opening. And just to know that that can you're opening up to a whole lot of different experiences, like that could
Yeah,
bring up like weird emotions and things that, like, why am I feeling this all of a sudden? And really intense emotions, but it's now got the space to move through you. It's not like, bottled in. And it, like what we mentioned earlier, like you can have these periods where it feels worse, but you're not going backwards. You're just like there's deeper things moving through. It can be like really, it can be symptoms and emotions, just like, what the fuck? Like, why am I feeling all this grief or all this kind of helplessness? Like, I just can't do this. I can't do this. And if you're not afraid of it anymore, it's like just completely surrender to it. And I think the key, because the brain can still have, but this is a little bit too much, to just like really
yeah.
let it completely be there. And it eventually does pass through, and then you'll feel a little bit lighter on the other side. Because I feel like we can get stuck in this, like, there's a little bit of fear of like, but what if I get stuck in it? And it's like, that's still a little bit of fear of the experience as well. It's just like, what if I just completely surrender to it?
Yeah, it's like when you finally are allowing, all of a sudden the brain goes and all these thoughts are like, oh fuck, he's allowing. So then you got this fucking lineup or going across all to the
Yeah,
back,
exactly.
through all these, it's going around the block, and it's
Yeah,
like I'm next, right? And then you finally, and the brain's like, okay, we're gonna finally, I think he's ready. Let's bring him some more shit, all right? Blah,
yeah,
blah, blah. So you might feel worse, might feel like, oh my God, but you're actually doing, you're feeling, you're getting rid of some of these loads. You're cleaning up the warehouse, and it might
yeah,
feel
exactly.
like it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's all finally allowed. Like, I love that analogy where it's like all these little guys that are like, okay, I want to come. Like he's letting us through, and
Yeah.
uh, and I feel like if I'm working with somebody one on one, and they're like, today I just had like things were going well, and like all this like, this intense fear or this intense helplessness or this intense like I just can't do this. I'm like,
Yeah.
great, that was there, that was in there, and now it's finally had enough space where it's like I can rear my head and kind of be let through, and it's gonna feel crazy. It's gonna feel like
Yeah.
like it could feel like the worst possible thing. But I've been there, and I'm glad to see that that is coming through you, because that only happens at a deep level of allowing.
I
So
try to emphasize that part because people they'll talk to me. They'll be like, I was doing good for 2 weeks, and then this shit happened and just fucking piled. I'm like, and I try to think of it this way. I go, okay, those 2 weeks that were good, that's you were on a vacation, right? We don't want that.
yeah,
Like it's nice to have once in a while because you get to see
yeah,
what's
you get a
what's coming
break.
in the future, right? It's like, oh, good. But the
Yeah,
work
yeah,
is
yeah,
done when
exactly.
you start having the bad days. We want the
Yeah,
bad days. You need to feel like I even tell people, you need to be on you need to allow yourself to be uncomfortable. You need to feel like shit. You want to feel like shit. The more you feel
yeah,
like shit and you work through it, the more you move forward in leaps and bounds. So we want more
yeah,
bad
exactly,
days. Please, more
exactly.
bad days, more work so we can move forward because they're
Yeah,
opportunities. We need them. Without them, if you're just doing it to get rid of and have good days, then you're not moving forward much. You're just
yeah,
right. You're just looking for the good days,
yeah,
right? That is
yeah,
not that's
exactly.
not prime time. You want the
Yeah.
the hard days. That's work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like taking away that whole judgment that the mind is making of the journey. Like it's like, yes, yes, yes. Now this
Yes.
is good. This is good. We're getting somewhere. Oh, no, I've had a setback. It's like no, the setback doesn't actually exist, right? It really doesn't. It's like it exists if you believe in setbacks. Like if you believe that this came here and it's triggered a setback. It's like you said, it can be a bad day, and that's the authentic acknowledgement is not like, oh, I'm feeling great, but I'm like, I'm not. No, okay, it's a bad day, but that's part of the program. Like that's good.
Yeah, you change
And
your way you view it. Before a setback meant
yeah,
back, back,
yeah,
failure, shit. Now it's
yeah,
ah, yes, right?
yeah, exactly.
Opportunity. Yes, this is good. I'm moving forward. So you kind of
Yeah,
switch the way because that's what it is.
exactly. It's that opportunity. And then I would say for people is like it yeah, like sometimes the bad days get bigger and bigger, but also the there's like a lighter and lighter as well, because you start to get this um, this realization that no matter how bad the bad day is, it doesn't last forever. Like I think that's key, especially when you're approaching it in this allowing, like, okay, I'm going to surrender to that. This is a bad day, and or like this is an uncomfortable experience, and this is what's coming up, and I'm just going to like let it wash over me, like surrender to it, because I know that it's not going to be here forever. And the less that I fight it, the less of a problem it is. And the more of these that you go through, then it's like, oh, okay, this is something new that's challenging me, but I've been here like 10 times now. And even though the brain's saying, like, this is too
Yeah.
much, this one is going to end you, like, this is a big crash, it's like, yeah, but how long does it act? Like, did it last forever, like the brain was saying every single time? Or did it eventually like have that vacation time as well? And it's like, yeah, you start to like have your own experience to work on where it's like, okay, yeah, I know what's going on here. And the more you trust that, that's when you're like, that's how we all end up where we are, because it's like something in you starts to figure this out, and it's
And that's
it's
why
less
it
of
took
it.
me 3 years because of this
Yeah,
shit, right? Getting thrown off the path. I needed to get thrown off the path and get back on it. There's delay times. There's learning curves.
yeah.
There's all kinds. This is why it takes this
Uh,
long, right?
and I would say like it happens. Like, don't worry about anybody else's journey. Like for anybody watching this, because everybody's going to have different timelines, because everybody's life circumstances are different, and also like you said, like your lessons are going to come. Maybe you're not meant to just have it all come at you at like once and then heal like that. Like maybe you're just like someone that's going to have like little tidbits, and then you're going to get a little bit, and then you're going to have a little tidbit. Maybe you're somebody that's going to like burn through it all at once. Like that's the beauty of how the more spiritual understanding of this is, like that it's going to come to you when you're ready for it. The right book is going to come to you if you're like,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a resource. And then suddenly that's what happened with me. I was like, I find it through a random place, like a comment here on a forum. And then it was like, try this. And the next thing, like 6 months later, I was like, how did I find that book? Like it absolutely changed my life. And I just found it randomly through something like that. But if I'd found that book 6 months earlier, I would have just completely dismissed it. So
Right.
it's like it's gonna come to you when you're ready for it. So don't, like, we can so easily be like, is it happening the same way it happened for Kyle and Helmut? Like, am I like, is it exactly what they did? No, it's gonna be your path.
For me, I'm grateful that it took me 3 years of, sitting in the trenches second by second of hell, because then you really learn this craft compared to
Yeah,
somebody, let's say, I'm giving a random example, that, went through this in a couple of months. They're
yeah,
gonna, when that problem comes back, because it will come back,
yeah,
they're not gonna be a master at it. They're gonna be useless, right? They didn't
yeah,
learn
yeah,
nothing out of it. We
yeah,
actually learned something out of it, and it
yeah,
affects us, our future, because the future keeps throwing us curveballs, and we're like, it's almost like you become a master a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Others are
yeah.
like, oh, okay, what did I just learn? I don't even know.
That's a good point. And I would say, like, for me, I did have that again afterwards where I like had this big shift, and I was like, okay, for like 6 months to a year, I just did things again. I went traveling, I went exercising, I started the YouTube,
Yep.
I did all of this. And then new things came up in life. And it was like, and another one to go back to where we started this whole conversation was another relationship, right? So it's like I hadn't been in a
Oh,
relationship for like 3.5, 4 years. I've been like completely on my own since the previous one, where I was just like in a journey, and it was beautiful. Like I learned all the stuff about like, oh, I don't actually need somebody else to feel love. Like that's actually
yeah.
right here with me, like being myself. And then it was like that opened up a whole new like emotional, energetic experience, like meeting somebody, and then kind of we were and this is where I go back to, was like you find somebody, and it was like we were both in this like deeper part of our journeys, and this brought up a whole new can of worms for both of us, I think. And for me, it was really interesting to see like how all of um this clinging then started to happen to the other person, and it was like, oh no, like now I've lost that. And then um and then some financial stress, like some things, I made some bad decisions in my life, and that blew up, and that blew up. And then the next thing, I was like, the stress bucket was kind of coming back into my life. And yet, like you said, I learned all this kind of stuff in the trenches, but it was a um, great reminder, or like, yeah, like a like you do, like say you get your degree, and then you go off and study something, or you go off into the world, and then Like you're like, let me go back and like study like another course that kind of just gives me all this kind of revision of what I've learned, and it's still in there somewhere, but I wouldn't kind of it wouldn't be so deeply ingrained if I didn't have this deep reminder. And that's kind of what I felt. Whereas like I think for you, maybe you were in the trenches for a little bit longer, whereas like I was in the trenches for a while. I broke free, did some things, and then it was like, and it was great. Again, this is exactly how my journey had to play out. Like it was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect for me. That then life threw a whole bunch of curveballs again, and it was like, okay, we know how to
It's
get
not
through
over.
this.
The
It's
journey's
yeah,
not over.
and it was never as bad as it was the first time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was also in some senses more challenging because it was like, there's no way to get away from this. I just really have to like it's you're more in contact with it. It's more direct. And but yeah, like you said, the journey's not over. And I think that's really important for people is like imagining this place of like full recovery where it's like because you're only imagining that also to help get away from something here. It's like I'm going to get to this place where I don't
Yeah.
have to feel anything uncomfortable. Where it's like, no, 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 no. You work with all of this, and then you have the tools, like you said, you become the master. Where whatever life throws at you, you're like, okay, maybe it does knock us down for a little bit, like a couple of weeks or something like
Yeah.
that, or wherever somebody's at. But it's like, yeah, it's got a lesson in it again. Yeah,
Yeah. For me, it's sure symptoms are gone. Great. But it's now opening up doors that haven't been open for maybe 30 years. It's like
yeah,
now
yeah,
I can handle whatever. Let's see what's down here. Maybe things are ready to be opened and see what's there. Like things that you don't maybe didn't recognize before, all of a sudden they open up. They're ready to open up and go, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh,
yeah, yeah.
this brings me closer to me being able to be my authentic self. I didn't realize I was not doing that or avoiding that or whatever it is."
Yeah. Yeah, you see, like, because now you go back into life again. Like, if you were very isolated, now you're gonna
Yeah.
see all your patterns in a different way. It's like in the past we were unconscious to all of this stuff. Like this was hidden. Now we've opened up, and now you're back in the world. And it's like you said, it's like, oh wow, like look at what's playing out here. Like that was for me. Like when I'm in a relationship in the past, that would have all been like,
Yeah.
it would this whole thing like the new relationship played out over like a couple of months, but like I remember like it got so deep so quick because there was just no bullshitting. It was just like, cool, let's like this is what's playing out, this was playing out, okay, I'm being honest, you're being honest, this like we're just completely honest, this is what I want, okay, you don't want the same thing, it ended, fuckload of emotions come to the surface, but it's like you're just seeing all of your old patterns play out in a way that you didn't see in the past, so now you're opening like all of this stuff. Like, wow, I didn't even know that was there, but it's not a bad
Right.
thing. But yeah,
Well, even also the type of music I was listening to, I got bored of all my life. The type of friends that I had for 30 years of my life, I started cutting them out.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, music, people, all these old things that I kept around
mm,
and I didn't like anymore. You start to purge and change and become and morph like a butterfly to a different
yeah,
fucking
yeah,
person. And it's not
yeah,
just the symptoms anymore. It's everything that you didn't realize.
yeah, yeah. And I like that point because a lot of people are trying to get back to their old life. It's like, okay, before, and I had this playing out in my mind for a long time, and I did that a little bit. It's like I got
Yeah.
better, and then I went and did a whole bunch of old things again. I was like, okay, this is what I used to like doing, and it was perfect because that needed to get out of the system. It was like for 3 years or whatever, how long it was, I couldn't do any of this, and it's been, when I get better, I'm going to do this. When I'm going to get better, I'm going to do
Yep.
this, and then I did all of that, and then it was like again, then something started to feel it's like, oh, okay, I'm getting a little bit sucked back into these old ways of doing. So like, what if I let that go? What did I learn in this kind of journey? And I was like, oh, that I'm actually on a different path than I thought I was before all of this. And I think that's key because, again, when people are really stuck when I'm working with them, they're like, when am I going to get back everything? And it's like, forget about that. Like, sure, maybe
Yeah.
like again, it's not
Yeah.
like you can't do certain things, but just embrace where life is taking you now. Like you're on a way more authentic path. There's a reason all of this is happening. Like for me, it was like, I get these flare-ups every time my mind would be like, oh, I'm gonna go do that. And it's like, no, no, no. Life's like, you're going here, you're going here. Like, forget about that. Leave that behind. Forget about that.
Well,
And
just
you
like the
learn it through.
business, like you were mentioning the business thing, right? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is what I planned for 2 years. I'm gonna have a franchise. I'm gonna do this, right? And it's just constantly resistance. You got Karens making complaints on Google. You got 2 star out of 5. You're like, what the?
Yeah.
right? You're like, this is supposed to be working. I just bought this tool and
Yeah.
it's not, right? And then you're doing this mind body thing. It's like, oh, this is working so easily. I'm getting, I'm helping people. Why is this so easy? It's like
Yeah.
you follow where it just flows, it
Yeah.
seems.
Exactly. And sometimes, and I think the key for both of us was that willingness though to like try things, and then you respond to like what comes up, So it was like for me, it was just throwing myself into everything. For you, it was like, okay, cool, do this business, and it's like, cool, that was great because it's not like a holding back from life out of like, I'm only going to do this, and then it's responding to what's coming up. It's like, oh, okay, like I'm trying this, it's not working, now let's go with what is working. Whereas I think a lot of people can still stay back in this kind of like I've noticed that in myself sometimes as well, as this like, well, I don't want to get anything wrong, so I'll just stay here where and it's the same with like all the symptoms and the exposure, but you can extrapolate it to anything in life. It's like, well, I don't want to like make that wrong choice, but it's like that's you do it, and that's how you see, oh, this feels better than that, so let's do this one.
Find out. That's it.
Find out
Find
exactly.
out. You'll either get the contrast of what you don't want, or it'll just line up and you'll be like, that's what I need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Love it.
Did you find yourself getting more, well, obviously, you got more
Yeah,
spiritual.
yeah, and we touched on a lot of it, but I like that you asked that question specifically because what this did, and often like we can have ideas of what spiritual means. Like, oh, okay, so spiritual means this or spiritual means that. But what it did was it just opened my mind to this way bigger picture playing out in life than my small ego, which got completely fucking shattered by this whole thing, where it was like you think you know what's going on, but until you accept that it's not what you think it is, like life's gonna keep on waking me up to that. And yeah, as I went deeper and deeper down this path, that and you start to see it like all this kind of cynicism and skepticism. A lot of it is repressed pain as well. It's like I need to
Mhm.
know exactly what the world is so that I don't acknowledge that I'm afraid, that I'm that I feel vulnerable, that I feel this, and like as that all kind of lifted, my mind was just like, wow, like there's this is so much kind of vaster than I could ever imagine. And anything that in the past would have been like, oh no, that's a bunch of crap. That's a bunch of crap. It's like, yeah, that's a part of this. That's just, like all these kind of different perspectives, spiritual and all these different kind of avenues. Yeah, my mind just became so open to everything. And I started to realize like that the reason that nothing had felt right in the past was because I wasn't meant to, do what everybody else was doing. Like now I like
Yeah.
to spend a lot of time meditating and all these kind of things. And it was like I would never have found that if life hadn't shown me like, through a very radical way.
Yeah. Um, what I noticed is going through this journey, I started not taking I the contrast was I was taking life for granted because I wasn't aware. When you're
Yeah.
suffering, you're going through this grief of, well, I can't do this anymore, that anymore. Life's not fair. I can't all the hopes and dreams that I had, they will never pan out. Or
Mm-hmm.
there's a constant reminder of what you were able to do, right? So you're living in this grief of all the little things, and you're like, I wish I could just, you know, do something simple. Just eat a bowl of pasta. That would be the
Yeah.
best thing in the world right now. And then when you get to that point where you're able to do it, you look at things totally different. Like going to the
Yeah.
store in a summer's day, you start to really, appreciate just going
Yeah.
to the store to get a bag of chips. It's like the best fucking thing in the world. When before it was like, before it was like, yeah, I got to do this. Fuck it. You're at the beach. You're like, you're not even happy at the beach, right? You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
ruminating or stressed about something. You're not being aware of your surroundings and really enjoying and smelling the flowers. I guess
Yeah.
that saying
Yeah.
is smell the flower. And it really forces you to smell the flowers and really enjoy the present moment for what it is when
Yeah.
before we didn't know we didn't care about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, and I find it funny, like just from people that I've spoken with, and because I talk a little bit about the awakening stuff and that I draw in like a different crowd than just the healing. And it's interesting how many people that started to go down a spiritual path was like they wanted to become more present and more mindful and more like, a lot of people just kind of have that uh interest, and then they get an illness, like a mysterious illness out of nowhere, or this kind of whole thing starts to play out because that like it's like life's like, okay, so you want to know what's the best way to like
Yeah.
to become more present. It's
Fuck
like I'm gonna
around,
show you.
find out. You're gonna find out.
Yeah. Way better than any like freaking specific course that you can go on or like
Yeah.
anything like that. Like life will show you this. And yeah, it's so like through all of this, you can start to realize what many kind of meditation teachers talk about, or all these other kind of really deeply realized spiritual people. You can be like, oh yeah, like you said, just going. It was like I remember the first time, like after being sick for so long, and then this whole new world, and then I would go for a walk, and it was like, wow, like there's so much, like just going for a walk, because I've been indoors for so long. I was like, it's like a whole world out there. It's
Oh,
just
it's
like,
magical. Going
yeah,
for a walk on a trail, right? Even drinking a ginger ale and just
yeah,
enjoying that moment. It's like, oh fuck, this is amazing. The sun on your face. You're like, oh man,
yeah,
I'm really enjoying. I don't have my brain cock blocking me or hijacking me with
yeah,
these horrible thoughts. I have freedom to just
yeah,
enjoy. This is what it means when they say enjoy the present moment, right?
yeah,
When before I was trying to do that, but my anxiety fucking got me, right? For
yeah,
me, it's like I got pissed me off. I'm like, these people, they're like, hide from your thoughts, but don't time travel to the future or don't time travel, to the
yeah,
past
yeah,
because anxiety will get you. But I'm like, anxiety is going to get me in the present moment too. The more I'm just, distract to try to hide from my thoughts, the more it's gonna, what you resist persists, and that didn't work
yeah,
for me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now,
yeah,
now that my nervous system was calm and chill, I being in the present moment made sense, right?
yeah,
It felt good, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that, and that shows like that's such a key part of this is the really um the deep work. It's like you can hear the surface level stuff, but if you have all this trauma and all this kind of this load in the nervous system, then that's just barely scratching the surface. Again, it's an entry
Right.
point, right? So there's a truth in that, but as all of us find out, it's like it's all what's here in the nervous system, and it's like if that's still there, then we're going to stay locked into this kind of state. And then you go through all of this, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's what everyone was talking about. That's what pieces like you get a taste of it, and like we are saying, it might, for me, then it was like, okay, so I realized that all on my own. Now how do I realize that in a busier life? And it was like constantly new, um yeah, like, so can you do it in this environment? And I was like, maybe not at first, but then you start to find it where it's like, okay, if I'm doing like busy here, busy there, traveling, this and this, like all these kind of things, it's like I spoke with somebody the other day, and it was perfect. He was like, you still need to go and find the sparks somewhere. So it was like going and like throwing yourself into all of these things, and if it brings things up, it's like great. That how else was I going to find like these like kind of little sparks to kind of keep the process burning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody who's dealing with all these symptoms and they find this video? What advice would you give them
Mm.
to be on this mind body path?
Yeah, good point. And I would say the most important thing for anybody is to know that where you're at currently, what you're experiencing, what's coming up for you, that like everybody's always, and it's great that you're looking for things, that you're finding things, like that's how you learn new things. You find the resource that is right for you at the time. But I would point you back to knowing that what you're experiencing is okay, because the mind is tricky, the brain is tricky. You're gonna hear that, and it's gonna pull in your little doubts. That's like why I'm still not quite in that state. So I would say to anybody, just you are in the perfect place right now for your own healing. Like, don't, it's okay to, again, if you, I would say, like, instead of like seeking resources from an anxious place to like find it, follow what, yeah, follow what resonates. So like if watching these videos, you find the video and you're like, yeah, what these guys are talking about, that speaks to me. Like something in me is like, yes, yes, like I know that. Great, then follow that. And if you find videos, then follow that. But know that you're in the right place. What you're feeling now, the symptoms that are coming up, just trust it. Like come back to trusting your experience, because that's what we're talking about, is that it's here, right? What is here? It's like, don't resist what persists. So start here. If
Hmm.
it's not what we're talking about, but it feels like it's something else. Like maybe they're talking about this, but what about this that I'm experiencing? That's it. That's it. That right there that you're experiencing. Go there, and it will work out. It's like I would just say, just slow down, stop looking so hard, but
Yeah.
just look back. What's here, and it'll work out. Yeah.
And allow it. I think that was the biggest message that we had today.
Yeah,
Allow.
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Allow it. And that starts by like, what's here that I don't want to be here? And what if I didn't have to do anything? Because again, we're talking about healing, we're talking about this whole thing. But the funny thing for me, like the most powerful moments was when I stopped trying to heal anything, when it was just like, because that's what
Yeah.
allowing is. And there can still be this like subtle um, resistance in allowing, right? So it's like, I'm going to allow this so that uh, it heals, where it's
Yeah.
like, I had it even recently. I just had this like weird pain in the right side of my chest, and I was like, okay, whatever, sit with it, meditate, feel into it, go about it. But it'd been there for like months, and it was starting to get like more and more like
Yeah.
annoying, and I was like, oh, okay, what is this? Like maybe now it's something else, and oh, okay, I allow, I surrender, and then just recently I was just like, what if this never went away, right? Like what if I just this pain in my chest, like it's been annoying me and it's gotten more annoying, and what if it never went away and I just carried on with life as usual with it there? And then it was, oh shit, there was a little bit of and good, it had to play out to that point where again it was like it got annoying enough, and actually I realized in it there was something um that again was starting to hold back a little bit from life, because it was like, oh, okay, let's sit with this a bit more, let's allow this a little bit more. But eventually it was
Yeah.
like, this can be here forever and I'm just going to go about doing anything. And then it was like, oh shit, it's not actually so much
That's
of a problem.
key. That's
Yeah.
key because you can use allowing also wrong because if people
Exactly.
allow to get rid of, they're like, okay, I allowed it. Why are you still here? Then you're using it as
Exactly.
a weapon to get rid of what?
Yeah.
Danger, right? So you're doing it again, right? So it's
Yeah.
um for me, it's you have to authentically allow with no small print, no strings attached. And I would go even like I went crazy with this shit, with this taking away the resistance. I would go like I would agree with the thoughts. I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that thing is a
Yeah.
heart problem. It's gonna mean you're gonna have a heart attack." And I would say, "Good, thank you. I hope I do have a heart attack, and I hope this pain, let's say for example, I hope this pain stays here for another year, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope it stay." So I totally took away the fight, totally took away the resistance. The brain did its job. It sent the alarm, right? I go, "Yep, I hope it stays here." Took away the fight, and then
Yeah.
it would shift, and I would actually get mad at it if the next day it was gone. I'd be like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa!
Yeah.
We had an agreement. We're gonna stay here for a year." And
Yeah.
sometimes people don't like hearing that. They're like, "Wait a minute. If you're doing that, if you're allowing something, if you're actually asking for more of it, won't you manifest that to become a
Yeah.
problem
Yeah.
in your body?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, no." I'm like, I understand what you mean because our brains are
Yeah.
powerful. We manifest, we attract what we, uh, put our attention to. But what you're doing is you're bringing exposure. You're sending a message of safety, which turns that alarm off. So yeah, you
Yeah.
might have discomfort in the short run, but it pays off in the long run because that thought is no or symptom is no longer you're not a slave to it anymore, and there's no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
you won't be putting attention to it anymore compared to
Yeah.
somebody who avoids that thought or that symptom. What you resist persists. They're thinking about that symptom the first year, second year, months and months and months, 7 years is still
Yeah.
thinking about that symptom. What do you think brings more attention? The person that's resisting that thing or the one that invites it in and turns that
Yeah.
alarm off and it's gone? Poof,
Yeah.
right?
And I like what you said, like that question, or that response that people would have, where it's like, oh no, aren't you gonna manifest that? And if you can just meet that thought in exactly the same way. So it's like, why is that a problem? Like if I really did manifest this to be more, isn't that just still a little bit of resistance? So it's
Same
like,
shit.
it's
Yeah.
the same shit. Exactly. Just see that there's actually nothing to be afraid of. And if something is triggering, then cool. So it's like, okay, no, but what if I'm going to manifest this to be here for the rest of my life? And like, I love like, it's so like, there's no negotiating with it, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
cool, then be here. Okay, I'm going to manifest it. Cool. Then manifest it. Like,
Yeah,
you're
let's
just
manifest it.
completely negating any fear of it, where it's like, it takes away all the power of it as well, because it's like, I don't care. Like, do your thing.
Right. It's if you're a spiritual person, which I started becoming, um,
Yeah.
the OCD, the looping thoughts can actually throw it in your face also. So I started to see numerology and I go, oh fuck, that
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
something. I had a dream about this happening, or I walked, I saw a dead cat. What's the meaning of that? All these signs and the spirituality actually became my fear because I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
opening up. And some people, and I try to tell them, be aware of that, right? Don't
Yeah.
overthink it. Don't get too sucked into tarot card readings, mediumship readings, because we get desperate,
Yeah.
right? We might want to look for answers. Please tell
Yeah.
me I'm
Yeah.
gonna be fine. Actually, they say that you're gonna find a new disease and you're gonna die in the next 5 months. And that
Yeah.
happened to me, shit like that. And that
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
was terrorizing.
Yeah.
So spirituality, it's great and all, but be careful because the OCD can try to throw it in your fucking face. Just
Yeah.
allow it. And then allow it.
I, I love that because it's going to use whatever, like whatever the fear is going to come through, whatever kind of story you're putting on top of it. So for some
Yeah.
people, it could just be doctors and medicine, right? And then it's going to come through in that terminology in your mind, where it's like, oh, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that. If it's spirituality, that like it's still the same underlying energy and emotion, So it
Yep.
doesn't matter like what world it is. You just start to kind of see it for what it is. It's like, okay, so
Yep.
it's using all spiritual terminology, but what is it really? It's just a bit of fear, or it's
Yeah.
just a bit of this or a bit of that. So
Fear
yeah,
and suffering was my root fears. That was my,
yeah,
you know, like dying, um, and suffering. Those were my core alarms for
yeah,
me.
yeah. And that's the thing. You get to like the real root shit that's actually in almost in every human, but most people are just like pretending that, and that's why it's such a gift because you get to kind of like dig up all the stuff that everybody's carrying around in them all the time. But it's like everybody's going to die, but most kind of minds are just ignoring that fact until it really hits them in the face.
Right.
All of this, and you're like, I didn't realize there was like this deep root feel, this deep like root suffering. Like you're actually seeing it for what it is, where everyone's like, yeah, everything's impermanent. Like you're gonna die, and everyone else is gonna around you is gonna die. And it's like, no, me just saying all of this might be tricky. Like, whoa, why are you saying all of that? That's not very like, positive or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, that's what's in there, right? That's what's in there. And then you see it and you're like, that's what kind of plays out in all these other places is these root fears. Like you said, you get to the real roots of it and then you see it for what it is and you can pluck it out.
Awesome. So, thanks for being on the show. I gotta have you on again because I'm sure we can talk about some
Yeah.
other shit. We can talk about this
Yeah,
shit
we
out
could keep going. Yeah.
for a week, right? So what we'll do is, yeah, we'll get another thing going again. But send me
Yeah.
all
Awesome.
your links, and I'm gonna put them in
Cool.
the description so that people can check out your YouTube page,
Yeah.
all the social medias, whatever. And also, I'll put all the symptoms in the description so people can check out kind of like all the stuff you went through.
Yeah. 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 Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's the same as when I had you on. Like we could do this all day. I love these
Yeah,
conversations.
we will. Awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.